After October 7th, that changed. We had that consensus, at least for a while, until the Western leaders buckled. But that doesn't change our understanding that we have to get rid of Hamas.
There is a phrase in the book of Ethics of Our Fathers: do not judge a person until you're standing in their shoes. Do countries around the world really have a say in how Israel should execute its war? How Israel should protect themselves and not protect themselves? Are they living in the shoes of the country of Israel? How would you have reacted if your neighboring country has been hurling salvos of missiles and swearing to your annihilation? How would you react? We talk about the equivalency of the 1,200 civilians who got killed and murdered on October 7 is equal in size proportionally to America as 40,000 Americans in one day, and then 10,000 taking hostage. When we hear such numbers, how would America have reacted? Or how did England react when it came to ending World War II in Berlin? So we know what history tells us. But our nations around the world, do they have the right to tell Israel how to prosecute this war? So let's listen in together to our Prime Minister, Mr. Bibi Netanyahu. So he talks about why and how we need to invade the final holding in Gaza and Gaza City, and why we need to just eradicate Hamas. We have no choice. We are at the point of no return. We need to make this happen. The world needs to support Israel and help Israel eradicate this evil from the world. Let's listen in together, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. Kindly subscribe to this channel so a little bit of light can push away a lot of darkness.
There was a question whether we had the consensus, both national and international, to go into Gaza and wipe them out. And the answer was we didn't have it. After October 7th, that changed. We had that consensus, at least for a while, until the Western leaders buckled. But that doesn't change our understanding that we have to get rid of Hamas.
Did you know about the terror tunnels before October the 7th? Were you aware that they were building them?
Yes, of course. We knew. We didn't know the full extent because it's underground and there are limited ways. I think Israel has very good intelligence, but intelligence is collection, and that is always limited. And then you have to have your assessments. That is also limited. Yes, did we know about underground tunnels? Of course, yeah, we knew it. Yeah.
Prime Minister, you've just used the words, the Western leaders buckled. And I'm assuming what you're referring to is Keir Starmer's statement on the 25th of July, where he said that the UK would recognise a Palestinian state. What is your response to that? And do you think that is just going to essentially encourage Hamas to continue their resistance?
Yeah, of course it does. I mean, look, they commit the greatest savagery against Jews since the Holocaust. And the Prime Minister of Britain says, we'll reward you with a de facto state, which is what? Which is committed openly to repeating the October 7th massacre over and over and over again. And they say, well, no, look, we recognize Israel's right to defend itself. You know, they always add that. You hear that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
of
okay.
Course.
Well, they recognize Israel's right to defend itself as long as Israel doesn't exercise that right. So now let's imagine what would be the response of Britain if, well, in your case, about 15,000 people or 10,000 people would be butchered in one day, and you'd have, I don't know, 2,500 hostages taken. You know, would you say, oh, well, we should give our attackers a state right next to London? Of course not. What would the Americans say if you had 50,000 Americans butchered, okay, and thousands of Americans taken hostage? Obviously, they'd say, no, we're not going to give them a state, sort of not in New Jersey, but right in Manhattan, you know. That's ridiculous. So what the standard that is being applied is not merely wrong, it's just downright dangerous because you're really rewarding these monstrous terrorists with the greatest prize, and that's because of weakness. its weakness. Its weakness in the face of distorted media, of packed social networks, packed with bots, BOUGHT, bots. But it's also these radical minorities which are protesting there. And by the way, you should ask your Starmer. Here's a suggestion. Ask him, okay? What do these protesters say about Britain? I know what they say about Israel. Israel has to be destroyed from the river to the sea. You'd think this is a massive continent. It's all of 30, 40 miles, okay? But what do they say about Britain? Well, Britain should go down. What do they say about the UK? And the same for the protesters in the US. They burn Israeli flags, they burn American flags, and they burn the UK flag. So they're basically a hostile minority supporting monstrosities. And I think that it's shameful the way that the Western leaders in Britain, in France, in Canada, in New Zealand, the way they buckle under. They don't have, Europe has gone through the destruction of the Jews. 80 years later, that's what they have to say. They attack the Jewish state and they give a prize for those who would destroy the one and only Jewish state. Shameful.
And this is what the Prime Minister has been up against, trying to deal with world leaders who really are not justified to assert their opinion how Israel should execute the war. The reality on the ground is rewarding Hamas for the October 7 after 700 days of war, where there are still 20 live hostages being held in the tunnels. Why aren't these world leaders screaming from the rooftops to Hamas to return the hostages? They really cared about the plight of the Palestinians in Gaza. Then Hamas is the answer. They return the hostages, they put down their arms, there's no more war in Gaza. Gaza can be rebuilt and the citizens can gain freedom with a government that's going to give them the freedoms that they need. And this is what our Prime Minister has been up to since the break of the war. It's not only fighting 7 fronts to protect Israel's real estate location, but also the PR war that's out there. And the amount of slander, of lies, of fake news, of propaganda that is being sold to the world, and the world just gobbles it up. I mean, we have to be focused on 7 fronts of military war. Do we also have the ability to fight the wars online as well? In all reality, we are just 15 million Jews in the whole world. We're up against 2 billion Muslims. So obviously, you got 2 billion Muslims on social media promoting the lies. What chance do we have with just 15 million of ours? So we need to rely heavily on God in heaven. We need to rely heavily on the intellectual capacity of the average human being who's able to discern and separate fact from fiction, facts from lies, and realize that Israel is its rightful owner to its country. Israel has a defense force to defend itself against enemies such as this. Israel is committed and dedicated to the living, to the embetterment of humanity in any way possible, versus the others are committed to death, carnage, and to be able to destroy and annihilate. So we're dealing with a war of good over evil. It is incumbent upon everyone, it behooves every one of us to use our intelligence to get the right information and to side with the right side of history and to help Israel to be victorious. Because Israel's victory is not just for Israel, it's for the whole world. God bless you. God loves you.